Again, welcome everyone. My name is Mary Ann Dickinson with the Alliance for Water Efficiency, and today we are going to talk to you about innovating the utility business model, getting creative with revenue. It's part of our Exemplary Programs webinar series. Our webinar today will be 60 minutes in length. We'll have time for questions. We're projecting to finish in about 45 minutes and have about 15 minutes for questions. If you're hearing my voice, you've already figured out the audio. It is through either your telephone or the computer microphone and speakers. Do one or the other. We are muting the webinar phone line and the audio line. And this is because we are recording the presentation, and it gives us a clean recording if we can minimize the background noise associated with drinking coffee and shuffling papers and the phone ringing in the neighboring office. All of those sounds then will not be part of the recording. But that doesn't mean we don't want you to participate. We very much want you to participate. And there is a way you can type in questions throughout the webinar, and we will be answering those questions at the end of the webinar with the speakers. So the way you access the dialog box to type in the questions is if you look in the upper right-hand corner of your computer screen, there is a little orange rectangle with a white arrow. If you click on that white arrow, it'll open up a dialog box where you can see the area to type in a question, and though your question will go directly to Liam McCarthy, our webinar master today, and he will be reading the questions in the order that they are received. So we very much want you to participate. Just because we're muting the presentation for recording purposes doesn't mean that you won't have an active opportunity to ask the questions you'd like. So the purpose of this webinar today, as part of our series on showcasing exemplary utility programs, we want to talk to you today about a couple examples of utility ventures that are non-traditional, that are out of the box of what you typically would think a utility does and would charge for, and therefore highlight those revenue sources that can help strengthen the utility's revenue stream. Improve and stabilize their fiscal health, increase utility efficiency, and provide extra benefits for ratepayers and hopefully help keep rate increases a little bit more manageable. We get lots of questions at the Alliance about alternate revenue examples, and so we're really pleased to be able to present you this webinar today. Here's a chart that I think is probably familiar to all of you. This happens to be the National Association of Water Companies, their annual residential gallons sold. You can see it's just on a downward trend. From a high in 1988, it has just been going down. And from a water efficiency perspective, of course, that's great news. It means we're becoming more efficient with our water use and reducing waste. But from a revenue perspective, well, it's not so good. It's troublesome. It means you have to stabilize your revenue and sometimes cut costs in order to balance the books. And so having other options for revenue can be very attractive. Revenue stability is a problem everywhere. We don't see any utility that isn't struggling with this issue. And many utilities who are doing conservation programs are feeling it very acutely. Their demand is being reduced from things that are out of their control, which is, a customer going to a big box store and buying the latest plumbing products that are available for sale, all of which are much more efficient than whatever plumbing fixture they're taking out. So that's an automatic savings that's happening in the background and a reduction in demand. Then many utilities have active conservation programs which are deliberately designed to reduce demand, and when you reduce demand, you're reducing water sales. It's an unavoidable connection. During the recession, we saw huge dips of demand that came from industry, shift changes, layoffs, home foreclosures, businesses moving to other service areas. There were a whole series of reasons why the recession impacted a number of utilities and caused huge swings in the revenue that they had predicted that they would receive. Then you've got the weather. If it rains a lot, you have reduced demand for outdoor irrigation. Your peak demand is down, but that means that peak revenue, which is often your high tail block revenue, that means that revenue is down as well. So wet years can be just as troublesome as dry years when you don't have enough water to sell. Then we've got the whole issue of costs rising. Infrastructure costs are rising because all that maintenance that we've deferred on our distribution system for when we might have more money later, well, that comes to um, basically roost, and those increased infrastructure costs have to be met with revenue to fund those. And we're now finding, as our infrastructure is collapsing and more main breaks are occurring, our infrastructure is aging, there's a higher cost to keep it going. And there's a rise in other fixed costs too. Fixed costs of labor, insurance, energy. These are all costs that are increasing for water utilities even as the revenue you're getting from consumers is reducing. And then, of course, there's the issue of inflation, which hasn't been as big a problem in recent years, but might become one in the future again. So we have always preached that conservation is part of the solution. It's not the enemy to revenue stability. It is part of the solution to long-term fiscal health for a utility because it's a long-term cost reducer to the utility. If you're avoiding having to build an expensive new treatment plant expansion or expensive new reservoir or any other kind of expansion in the system that you have to fund through capital revenues, if you can avoid that because your demand is lower or you can defer it into the future, that's worth millions of dollars to your ratepayer. But the problem is there's short-term rate shock, and we'll talk about our advice on that in a minute. But I want to point out that the revenue loss is not just due to the conservation program, it's also due to other drivers, as we've just been discussing. Conservation is, as I say, a cost reducer. Every gallon that you save is water that doesn't have to be pumped, treated, and delivered. It's an investment in the system, just like an investment for drilling a new well or building another storage tank or putting in any other capital improvement. It's an investment like that too, but it does have short-term effects that have to be planned for. And so what we generally work with our members on is, dealing with the subject of reduced utility costs. And when you can reduce them, it can generally mean reduced customer rates in the long term because you're avoiding that infrastructure capacity that you would have to have increased. And we've done a report with the City of Westminster. We'll be doing reports with other cities as well that showcase how decades of conservation programs have actually reduced customer rates, not increased them. Westminster's rates, had they not done conservation, had they not kept their demand down, and had they had to build the facilities that they expected they would have to build, their rates would have been nearly double. So these are the good stories, the long-term stories, but it's the short-term issues that are the problem. And the short-term effects are ones that we work with our members very much on. If you're not a member of the Alliance for Water Efficiency, I strongly encourage you to consider joining us because we have a whole suite of tools to help you with that revenue stability question. We know that conservation itself is not going to succeed in your utility if we can't help you solve this revenue stability issue. So we've built an initiative called Financing Sustainable Water. You see the website there and in the picture in the right-hand corner. It's financingsustainablewater.org. That's how you access it. And it's got a handbook written in layman's English, so you can give it to board members as well as to utility staffers to help talk about the subject of designing rates that can both conserve water and be revenue stable. We also build a model, sales forecasting and rate model, that actually walks you through some options for rates. You can play with scenarios and rates and figure out what rates will yield you the expected revenue that you are projecting. Don't plan for an average water year and average water sales. We don't seem to get those average water years anymore, and this model helps you through that by actually doing a probability analysis of how well you might be able to meet that revenue requirement that your finance officer has set. So these are tools available to you. We strongly urge you to take advantage and to look at them. But we know that revenue is bigger than just getting customer rates, and we want to help utilities evolve to a new business model that will think a little bit more broadly about where it gets its revenue sources. And yes, we of course want to test new rate designs and help utilities, pilot programs that may be a little bit more innovative but might be more stable. But there are also ways to look beyond the ratepayer for additional revenue sources and potentially develop some new services that would be outside of the revenue that you get from water rates. And so we're very pleased today to be able to introduce to you two water utilities who have done that. Donnell Brown with Connecticut Water. She's the Senior Utilities Customer Service Representative at Connecticut Water, and Matt Stoss, who is the Procurement Manager at Connecticut Water. We'll talk to you about a very unique program that they've had at Connecticut Water for quite some time. And we'll also hear from Alan Hyman, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at DC Water in Washington, D.C. And he's going to talk to you about their new initiative for working on these issues. It's called Blue Drop. So we're really pleased to be able to feature both of these programs in the webinar. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Donnell to talk with you about Connecticut Water's Linebacker program.
Thank you, Marianne, and thank you to AWE for having us. Good afternoon, everyone, and to those on the West Coast and in between, good morning. My name is Donnell Brown. I do oversee the Linebacker program here at Connecticut Water, and with me I have Matt Stoss, who implemented and managed the program for several years. So thank you for spending some time with us this morning to hear about our Linebacker program and revenue generated. I think you'll see that it's a win-win for both the customer and the company. So first, a little bit about Connecticut Water. We are a regulated subsidiary of Connecticut Water Service. We serve over 90,000 service connections, which is approximately 300,000 people. And that's in 56 towns here throughout Connecticut. Next slide. We do have our initial offering was we were looking for ways to expand our non-rate revenue, and we saw other utilities that were making the same offer. So what we did is we knew we could provide this protection plan for our customers, and thus in March of 2000, the program was born. We knew Linebacker was going to be special and that we'd be expanding the program, so we went ahead and we patented it with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And we started developing marketing material to flood our customers with information about our new program. Next slide. The initial program of Linebacker Water, Plan 1, it covers the repair or replacement of the service line from the curb box up to and including the first shutoff in the house. That includes non-functioning curb boxes. It also includes the cost of turn-on and turn-off fees that would otherwise be charged to customers, and that in and of itself really pays for the cost of the cost to the customer. It's something that most homeowners insurance policies don't cover, and even if it is covered, there's usually some type of deductible. So we do allow residentials up to 1.5-inch service lines, and we also offer commercial, but only up to 2-inch service lines. With the repairs, we will loom and seed as well as provide temporary patch to the repair. Next slide, please. Part of our marketing efforts, one of the first things we did is we went ahead and we had our president draft a letter to explain and introduce the program to our customers. We had been a trusted utility provider for them for years, but this program being new, we really wanted to make sure we were introducing it right, and we had the president draft a letter to them. In bill inserts, we go ahead and we include and market the program within those bill inserts. We use telemarketing, which most people, they were really pleasantly surprised. That really increased the enrollment numbers. And we felt at the time, back in 2000, that the cost of the program, the market could hold $64 per year. So initially, the Water Service Protection Program was at $64 per year. Today it's at $85 per year. Next slide, please. Customers can enroll several ways. They can go online through the website. They can also mail back enrollment forms or call us directly. And we did go ahead to the DPUC to receive approval to include where customers could have the cost of the linebacker on their bills, so they wouldn't have to prepay all at once, and it was just part of their bill.
I'd like to just quick jump in, Danelle, and just make a quick clarification. We do offer the linebacker program through our unregulated subsidiary, which is entitled New England Water Utility Services. And really the clarification or the approval that we wanted to get from the Public Utility Control was the ability to put the charge for an unregulated subsidiary on the regulated water customer's bill. So that was just a little clarification there. So we do offer it through our New England Water Utility Services, but our customers, they recognize that name, but the name that they mostly recognize is Connecticut Water from a brand recognition standpoint.
Thank you. And they do, like Matt said, they can pay through their bill, or we can take prepayments. We do offer the program to condo associations, and we do require those condo associations to prepay in advance.
Because those are basically offered at a group discount. So we do allow the association to roll in total, but they don't really pick or choose the service line. It is they are allowed to roll their entire complex.
Yes. Next slide. We've found that it's been a win-win for both the customer and the utility. The customer is receiving peace of mind because the services are being provided by Connecticut Water, their trusted utility. All of our contractors are vetted. We do background, they're qualified, licensed, and background checks we ensure that those have been performed on any employee within their companies. And initially at the time, over a 2-year period, we saw 16% of eligible residents had enrolled in the program. For the utility, we've really seen that it's been that new revenue stream that we wanted to expand upon initially. And then we're also able to we have construction crews in each of our regions, so they are able to make the service line repairs. If they're unavailable, then that's when we'll bring in an external contractor.
And just want to touch on the background check requirement of our vendors. And I think it was earlier last year, and it might have been the year before, we really rolled out a program so our customers were aware of the employees that were coming to their house, the Connecticut Water Company employees that would come to their house to do any type of service work. And we really wanted to make sure that the vendors that we were sending to their homes to do work on behalf of New England Water Utility Services, that they were properly vetted and had the same really background check requirements that we subject our own folks to. So really, it was all about making the customer safe.
Yes.
And in the age of utility scams and people showing up at the door, we wanted to go that extra mile to ensure that the vendors are properly vetted.
Thank you. Thank you. And as we saw success with the initial program of the protection of the water service line, we wanted to go ahead and expand the service, so we partnered with home service to be able to offer customers both in-home plumbing and wastewater coverage. And so we had experienced, as you'll see later on, we had experienced customer growth in these expanded offerings. And in 2009, at the conclusion of our agreement with home service, we did go ahead and we felt that we parted ways because we felt that we could provide the service here in-house. Next slide, please. So in 2010, new services were launched. Next slide, please. We added 2 other programs, the Linebacker Plus, which includes water and wastewater, and then Linebacker Complete, which is water, wastewater, and in-home plumbing. Customers Again, it's an optional program, so they're under no obligation to enroll, but they have found it beneficial. It is a $50 service fee for wastewater and in-home call-outs, but there's no service fee for any call-outs for water service line repairs. And again, the customer can cancel anytime. All of these cover the cost of turn on and turn off that would otherwise be charged by Connecticut Water. So if they were using their own vendor, they would incur charges from us. But because they're part of the Linebacker program, those fees have been waived. Next slide. The coverage limits for water service line, we do provide up to $10,000 in coverage for any service line repair or replacement. Anything above and beyond that, we would go ahead and bill the customer the difference, and we would always notify them in advance if it ever exceeded that. As far as wastewater, it's a $4,000 wastewater single repair, and in-home plumbing, we cover up to $2,000. So again, these are typically things that homeowners insurance wouldn't provide for these repairs. So we've really found a niche in the market here. Next slide, please. The repair services, we do have subject matter experts in Linebacker that are part of our call center. They know which questions to ask so that when it comes time to sending the vendor or the contractor out, we know whether we need a plumber or whether it's going to require some excavation. All of our regions, again, we have local contractor bases that we use for each region, and we provide service as well as they provide service 24/7, 365 days. In 2016, just to give you an idea, we did take 767 calls related to Linebacker, and 397 of those were related to clogs and wastewater. So quite a few calls coming in versus the 141 maybe that were related to the service line. But again, as Matt said, we make sure that all of our contractors are background checked, that they're properly licensed, and because of that, they're able to provide that world-class service that we want to provide, and we've seen that customer satisfaction rating of 91.8% this past year. Next slide, please. The average repair cost, this is 2016 data. It does fluctuate from year to year. Some years we've seen the service line average repair up to $2,500. This past year it was down $1,600. And as I stated previously, most of the calls came in were related to internal, external clogs. So that's where most of our expenses went. Next slide, please. The Connecticut Linebacker revenue has increased by 50% since 2010. The blue line you can see represents the Linebacker only for the water service protection, and the red is for the expanded plans to include water and wastewater, or water, wastewater, and in-home plumbing. So although the Linebacker has decreased a little bit, what we're really seeing here is most of the customers that have been enrolled in Linebacker are actually upgrading their service to be part of that expanded plan. And year after year, our revenues just continued to increase. This past year, it was over $2 million, which was up $68,000 from the previous year. And first quarter for 2017 indicates that that trend will be likely to continue. Next slide, please. A little over a year after we acquired Maine Water, we went ahead and rolled out the Linebacker program to Maine customers. They have about 32,000 customers, which is about 80,000 residents over 21 towns in Maine. And their enrollment, the initial enrollment was 7%. They have held that, and it's currently at 7.8%. 2016 revenue for Maine Linebacker was $199,000, up $45,000 from the previous year. So in following with Connecticut, we hope to see that trend continue as they continue to market the program. And they've received positive feedback as well. So it's something new for them since the Connecticut Water acquisition of Maine, so something that wasn't offered to them before. Next slide, please. And we had a breakthrough in 2015. Late 2015, we went ahead and we started offering the Linebacker program to Connecticut, to non-Connecticut water customers that were not in our exclusive service area. And we started to do that through, we selected 3 towns here in Connecticut that we had done full advertising, print, social media, banner ads. And we've had a little bit of a growing pain with that. The reason we've seen that is we believe it's due to lack of brand recognition. And so what we're doing is we're starting to introduce ourselves to those communities. They don't see our trucks driving around every day. They don't have us coming to their homes to maybe change out their meter. So we've really found that we need to introduce Connecticut Water to them. And we've done that by starting to engage in some sponsorship opportunities, and that will help build on our brand recognition there in those communities. And we've already, since we've been doing that, we've already started to see the trends or the enrollment increase. Next slide, please. Customer satisfaction is very important to us. It's one of our building blocks of the company. We do expect to give world-class service, and part of doing so, after each repair is made, we shortly thereafter will send out surveys for customers. And you've all gotten the surveys. You've been to maybe shopping or a restaurant, and Mark's giving you great service. And at the end of the night, the bill comes and he circles it at the bottom. You know, and you loved Mark, you loved the service, but you went home and at the end of the night you just didn't fill out that survey. So when our customers take the time to not only fill in the dots, but really write, "We love Linebacker. We're so thankful we had it. It's paid for itself." We take that serious and we take it to heart, and there's no incentive for them to give us those remarks except for based upon the service they've had. So we do appreciate that, and we ask them if we can use that as a testimonial for future Linebacker marketing efforts. Next slide. And most recently, just a couple of weeks ago, really what the program is about is we want the customer to be able to make one call and they don't have to worry about this headache of their water line leaking and who are they going to call and how's it going to be fixed. And a couple weeks ago, we had a customer who had a problem. He had a leak, and he called us. He was happy that he got a live person. We were out there. We turned it off, and within 3 hours, we were able to make the repair. And then the next day, we went back out and loomed and seeded. So he actually took the time. You know, we're used to seeing this positive feedback on surveys, but for someone to take the time to write letters to the editors, we haven't seen it too often, but we're very pleased that they have, and Connecticut Water Company got the job done. That's really what we want our program to be about. So I think that's a good example. Next slide, please. So again, in 2000, March of 2000, we came up with providing the service line protection, and we've been doing it for 17 years now. Year after year, we've continued to see that trend and growth. Our contractors are all vetted, and we've been using some of the same contractors for all these years. So they've really come to know us and what to expect. They know all the terms and conditions of the program. In 2010, we were able to expand that program in-house to include the wastewater and the in-home plumbing as part of it. And we've seen over 30% of our enrolled customers select that expanded plan. So 2013, right after acquiring Maine, we went ahead and expanded and rolled out the program based on the success we had seen here in Connecticut, and that's exactly what we're seeing in Maine as well. So, and now with 2015, we continue to work to build that trust and in those communities that maybe we don't serve, but we want to offer the program to. So we'll continue to work for that. And any new acquisitions as part of Connecticut Water Services that come along, we'll do the same thing that we did in Maine. We will go ahead and, you know, within a year of them being part of Connecticut Water, we'll go ahead and offer the linebacker service to them as well. So next slide, please. We thank you for your time again this morning. And again, I hope you'll see that it's really been about a win-win situation for both the customer and us. They received great service by a trusted utility, and we are able to see a revenue stream that's been generated through providing those services. So thank you again. Next slide. If you have any questions, feel free to call, ask for myself or Matt Stokes, and you could always email if you think of something later. My email is dbrown@ctwater.com. And again, we thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Donnell and Matt. Really appreciate it. And if you've got questions for them right now, you can type them in the dialog box and we'll get to them before this webinar is over. Now we move to talking about DC Water's Blue Drop program. We have Alan Hyman, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at DC Water and President of the Blue Drop Initiative, and he is going to talk to us about this program.
Well, good afternoon and good morning to you if you're on the Midwest or Pacific side of the country. First of all, I wanted to congratulate my friends in Connecticut for the success of their program, not just because it's impressive, but because it's been going on for 17 years. That's amazing stuff. So Blue Drop, DC Water created a separate nonprofit organization back in November, and the main reason for Blue Drop's existence is all of the case that Marianne laid out at the introduction to this webinar about why we need to diversify our revenue model and change the way that we do business because consumption is declining, and as she noted, there's no good way to get your customers to consume their way out of your revenue issues for your utility, nor should we. It's the wrong thing to do. So we have declining consumption, we have a constrained geography, and we have rising costs. The secondary reason why DC Water decided to create Blue Drop was that DC Water has developed a lot of technologies and techniques that could be useful to the rest of the sector. So to take a quick step back, next slide please, into the history of DC Water, we were years ago at the stage that I like to call Water Utility 1.0, and this is a stage that a lot of utilities across the country still find themselves in. This is the notion that if you're a customer of a water utility, your interaction, your knowledge is limited to a water main break or some kind of service disruption, or when you receive a bill. It's a very underground model, and for many, many years, the chief executives of utilities were fine with that. Don't call us unless there's a problem, and we're going to try to stay out of your way and stay out of your lives. So we were known at that time in our history as DC WASA, the District of Columbia Water and Sewer Authority, and we had this sort of hard-edged, hard-colored, industrial-looking logo. And it wasn't really clear unless you knew us or what we were doing what that was. It could be anything, maybe vaguely related to government. There was this weird sort of hand and water drop thing happening, but it wasn't clear. So next slide, please. The other issue that we had was that our reputation was in tatters because we had a lead crisis in DC in the early part of the 2000s. Without getting into great detail, there was a change in the water chemistry. It led to the leaching of lead from service lines. This is a somewhat similar situation to what happened in Flint more recently, and it was devastating not only to the customers who had concerns about their children's health and their families, but it was not a good place for the utility to be in terms of its reputation or the way it was interacting with its customers. And you can see our little local hometown paper, otherwise known as the Washington Post, was doing headlines like "Experts Seek Answers on Tainted DC Water." There were concerns also that it was affecting real estate values during one of the hottest real estate booms in this area. So we had a big mess to clean up, not only in terms of the operations, but also in terms of the utility's reputation with its customers. Next slide, please. So what we did in early 2010 is we rebranded. And so DC WASA became DC Water. And we had a logo suddenly that was so simple that a 3-year-old could understand it. It was accessible, it was lowercase, it was friendly, it had this sort of tilted water drop thing to it. We started putting signage all over buildings that people didn't know what they were because there was no signage on them. We got into social media, the notion being that we would meet the customers where they were, and if they were having conversations about us, we wanted to be there and engage in those conversations with them. So we started to put an end to the days of other people telling the story of this utility, either in the press or in their communities, and started telling it ourselves more effectively. Next slide, please. We took advantage of all of that free advertising space on our vehicles that were around the city every single day, and we put tap water messaging on them. Again, not as a means of raising consumption of water to a meaningful effect on revenue or anything like that, but more we recognized that tap water was the meaningful connection we could make with our customers because it was the part of their lives that we provided that they couldn't live without. And we started to become known for infrastructure projects such as our big tunneling project, Clean Rivers, where we're spending close to $3 billion over the course of 30 years to completely reverse the district's combined sewer overflow problem and clean up its waterways. You see the former vice president there speaking along with our general manager and an EPA official and the mayor of DC. We became known for doing these really large groundbreaking events and sort of owning all of this infrastructure that our ratepayers were paying so much to put in the ground. Next slide, please. So Water Utility 3.0, as I call it, is this notion of expanding the revenue base, taking what we know on the road, looking for customers in different places besides the people who pay the bills. And we're just getting into this kind of work. It sounds like our friends in Connecticut have been doing it for quite some time. One example is Bloom. It's our Class A biosolids product that we're producing, and it is an exceptional soil amendment. Plants love the stuff, and what we're looking to do with that product is transform a business model where we have a waste disposal issue at the moment into resource recovery, something that people will pay for because it gives them economic value. And we started Blue Drop, and Blue Drop is a means of taking the expertise of DC Water on the road to other utilities across the country. Next slide, please. So what does Blue Drop do? We are in the consulting business. So for the moment, we're focused on external affairs and stakeholder engagement, the how do you get your utility from 1.0 to 2.0 stage, really helping other utilities tell their story in a much more meaningful and impactful way. We're selling Bloom under an agreement with DC Water, mostly in the Maryland and DC and Virginia areas. And then we're talking about the possibility of down the line, at some point in the future, helping to facilitate exchange of services or information between other utilities. This is the notion that if you were, let's say, San Francisco, and you wanted to provide a service to Boston, we might be able to help you do that without you having to go through the trouble of setting up your own Blue Drop to do it. Next slide. So Blue Drop is small, and it's early, and we have a very small team of people working on the initiative for the time being. There's 3 3/4 of us who are detailed to Blue Drop from DC Water, and then we have people who work on projects for Blue Drop clients from DC Water on occasion, sort of on an hourly basis, mostly in the Office of External Affairs, which I used to run during my last job at DC Water. And then we have a brand new set of 2 new employees starting June 5th, our Director of Operations and Client Services, who will not be DC Water employees. They'll be employed by the LLC. Next slide, please. So on Bloom, just to get into a little bit more detail on what we're doing for the biosolids work, we're looking to divert about 10,000 tons or so from land application this fiscal year, representing a cost savings to DC Water of more than $200,000. So important to point out, what we're doing is 2 different things for the finances. One is that we're generating revenue through the sale of, of Bloom and the consulting work, but we're also saving DC Water money on the land application of that biosolids because every ton that we market and sell is a ton that doesn't have to be land applied at a cost. Next slide, please. For consulting, we have a client in New Jersey. We have done some consulting on how you engage your stakeholders on combined sewer overflow control for 8 utilities and municipalities. New Jersey is one of the last states in the country to start the implementation of CSO control. Other jurisdictions, including DC, are a little bit ahead of the game. So we're using what we've learned about communicating with our own customers to help them communicate with theirs. We are doing some consulting in Ontario, Canada, helping the region up there organize itself a little bit better and continue doing some of the excellent external affairs work that they have been doing. And we also just started work with Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, a utility that is very similar to ours in many, many respects, except smaller. We're helping them with some stakeholder engagement and some communications planning work. Next slide, please. So how do we do business development? And this is sort of an ongoing area for us as we are just getting started. But we go to utility leadership conferences. We meet with people from other utilities to see what they might be interested in having us do. Our general manager and CEO, George Hawkins, is on the road a lot, speaking with people from other utilities. He hears from them every time he's out that he's interested in this or that thing that we might be able to do for them. And we're looking at getting some market research underway to find out what the sweet spot is. So we don't know yet if there's an ideal customer in terms of the size, the governance model, whether they're combined water or wastewater or one or the other. But we're devoting most of our new incoming staff resources to answering those questions and building up a pipeline of business. And we've also conducted a survey of DC water management to find out what everybody thinks they're good at and can be offering. One limiting factor is that DC Water staff have their own jobs to do. So we are relying on extra capacity among the subject matter experts at DC Water when we have Blue Drop work, and we have to fit it into their existing schedule and their areas of interest. Next slide, please. So what's next for us as we face the second 6 months and then the second year and the third year of our existence? We're integrating our new staff. We're growing a little bit faster than I expected to, which is exciting. We're putting in some basic business functions like financial controls and bookkeeping support. We're going to do those focus groups that I mentioned and the market research. Some strategic planning work is definitely underway with our board. And we're going to be partnering with other enterprises. Have to mention AWE, of course, but all the other acronyms that represent our industry and the ETA are all sources of knowledge that could be shared to potential customers and sources of potential customers for Blue Drop. So that is my brief presentation on how Blue Drop came to be and what we are doing. I think if I was to give this presentation in 6 months from now, we might have an entirely different list of clients and definitely some more services to offer and some more staff to talk about. Next slide, please. So there's my contact information if you have further questions, and I also look forward to answering questions during the chat today. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Alan. This is very exciting news hearing about the evolution of the Blue Drop program. So at this point, we are finished with our official presentations on the webinar, and we thank you, of course, for joining us. But now we're to the fun part, which is your questions. And while you are typing in your questions into that dialog box that's behind the orange rectangle, I just want to make a few little announcements while you're doing that. We will make a PDF of this presentation and also a link for the recorded webinar available in a few days. We'll have it posted on our website. AWE has an AWE webinar page that's part of the resource library, and all of our webinars that are publicly available are posted there. If you have questions that you've thought of after we close the webinar, you can still send them to us. There's Liam's email address, and we will get you answers from the speakers. If you haven't thought of those questions now to ask them and think of something as you're driving home tonight, we'd be happy to follow up and answer those questions for you. And then lastly, before we turn to the question session, we do have 2 upcoming webinars in the month of June. One is a combined webinar we are doing with EPA and the Irrigation Association. It's a webinar on WaterSense and SWAT, Smart Water Application Technology. What's the difference? What's the difference between the two? What do you need to know? So that webinar will be June 20th. And on June 22nd, we are going to do a webinar on our new NetBlue program, which is a program with a model water neutral growth ordinance and an offset methodology for how you could ensure that new development is water neutral in your community. So watch for that on June 22nd. So at this point, I'd like to open it up, Liam, to questions. What do we have?
All right, we have quite a few questions. This first one looks like it's for the AWE team. How did you establish that Westminster's rates would have doubled without conservation?
So I encourage you to visit the financingsustainablewater.org website. You can download the report and look at it right there. But basically what the report does is it analyzes what the costs would have been for that expanded infrastructure that would have been needed had they not kept their demand down with the conservation program. They were projecting increased demand along with their increased population, and had they built those facilities, the cost, the capital cost, and the ratepayer burden would have resulted in rates that were 91%, would have been 91% higher than they are now. And so that's an analysis where everything is daylighted. They basically compared the cost of the conservation programs to what the cost of the avoided infrastructure is, and then what the rate structure would have, what the rates would have looked like had they had to have carried that large capital improvement debt. So we published the report. It's posted on the website. We also are doing a similar analysis for 2 communities in Arizona. We'll be releasing those in the next couple of weeks. But it's a similar set of stories, different numbers, of course, because every community will have different numbers as to what its avoided infrastructure costs are. But in both cases, the numbers demonstrate that on the long-term basis, conservation is a reducer of rates. It's the short-term impact that we need to make sure we adequately get through, and that's what the rest of Financing Sustainable Water is all about.
Okay, great. Thank you, Marianne. This question looks like it's for Connecticut Water. How do you deal with the issues involved in public utility, in a public utility working on private property or pipes?
Oh, sure. So on the customer property itself?
Yeah, probably the liability issues. Yeah, the liability issues associated with that.
Right. So basically, we carry insurance. You know, if there's a, you know, our vendors are required to carry that insurance as well and name us as additionally insured. So, you know, in the event that there is an issue, you know, there are insurance measures in place.
Okay. Also for Connecticut Water, a couple people asked if the revenues you presented are gross or net.
Those are gross, correct?
Yes.
Yes, those are gross. And it's a relatively small piece of our overall gross. So all Connecticut Water Service, I think we're about 105 million. So it's a smaller percentage.
Okay.
Do you have any figures on the net, what the net revenue would be once your costs are deducted?
Yeah, so that's a little harder to answer because, you know, one of the things we're doing is we are offering this in really through New England Water Utility Services, but we do it through Connecticut Water Company. So when we're offering, so the people who answer the phone are Connecticut Water Company employees. People who go out and look at the repair and evaluate what needs to be done, those are Connecticut Water Company employees. So we have a DPC, we have an approved allocation method really to allocate the expenses appropriately to New England Water Utility Services. But I think we are around, that's going off of some current numbers here, just straight revenue and expenses, the net of the expenses is about 1.6. But I don't have the allocation piece of that that we do expense to New England Water Utility Services from Connecticut Water.
Okay, thank you.
All right, looks like these next line of questions are all for Connecticut, and I'm sure we'll have some DC questions toward the end. But for service line replacement, are you targeting, incentivizing, or prioritizing lead service pipes?
So,
lead service pipes.
Lead service pipes?
Yeah, yeah.
That we are not. We have been discussing internally what the correct approach is, but if we do have, find somebody that has a lead service line, I believe what we're doing is replacing it. Not all of our records are going to indicate who has a lead service line, so you know that's something that we may find when we dig up. What I would say, though, what we typically find, we are familiar with the areas that may have lead services. So these runs are, when I say runs, the length of the service line are generally shorter. So if you've got a leaking service line that's relatively short, whether it's made of lead or not, we'll generally replace it because, you know, it's more cost effective to just replace the line given its length. So that's kind of how we are been attacking those.
Okay. Can a customer use the program to replace a lead service line or only a leaking service line?
Only a leaking service line.
Okay. Have you noticed home insurance companies offering this type of service in the last few years? I'm not sure.
I have not seen home insurance, but I am aware of other national programs that do, you know, compete with our customer base.
Okay. We have a question about the estimated water savings from your program. Do you have a total?
No, I don't think that's something we've ever calculated.
No, it's not.
Not specific to the program. We do look at leaks, like customer repaired leaks, whether they're on our side of the curb or the customer side of the curb. Just as a clarification, we do own the curb. We own the piece of pipe from the water main in the street to the curb, but that curb obviously could be, you know, into the customer property. So I think that what we will do is we will, just to calculate what our non-revenue water is, we will try to capture that, but we capture that on a whole, not really specific to just Linebacker.
Okay. Do you adjust the bill for the water lost to the leak as well as making the repairs?
We have in the past offered waste adjustments to customers that have had a leaking service line, yes.
But generally, in our terms and conditions, we do not offer that. So they are more on a case-by-case basis where a repair might have been delayed. So, you know, in fairness to the customer, we'll work with them on a waste adjustment. But, you know, if a customer has a leak and it's been going on for some time, then that would really be up to the customer service department whether to provide them a waste adjustment or not. It would really kind of be done independently of the Linebacker program.
Okay. What role has social media played in either promoting or gaining feedback on the program? I think, you know, both presenters could probably chime in on this.
I think it's been relatively small. I know that we've done promotional efforts in social media for our non-Connecticut Water Company customers. But you know, the thing about social media is you have to have somebody to man that page. So it's really kind of a resource thing where if you're going to be promoting it through social media, then and people have questions and they expect an answer, you've got to have somebody to answer that. So I know that's been a topic of discussion here, but I do think that there's been some advertising, which has just been a little bit limited.
Alan, I think you should chime in and talk about the social media that you do at DC Water and for Blue Drop, because you guys do some very innovative social media tricks of the trade.
Yeah, years ago I introduced the social media program to DC Water, and what I always say is that social media platforms are free, kind of like getting a puppy is free. They require a constant care and feeding, and you've really got to think just long and hard about how you're going to allocate those resources to the function. So for a time, when we kicked off the program with Facebook and Twitter back in 2010, I was the guy. And I was working Twitter in addition to running the Office of External Affairs, serving on the executive team, et cetera. And it was a great way for me to learn the audience and what people were talking about, but as you can imagine, it was very distracting, and there were limits to my capacity there. I was backed up by our command center, which is the phone number you call when there's a water emergency and you want to report it or you want to know what's going on. And they were tasked with feeding me the information to communicate to customers via Facebook and Twitter. After I left DC Water and my friend and successor John Lyle took on the role, he was doing Facebook and Twitter in addition to being the head of the office, and he added a digital communications person who now focuses on that activity full-time. So for the bigger utilities, that's the way you do it, and you have somebody who, in addition to knowing the place and being able to deliver information that the customers need, can create custom content to push out to customers on different social media channels. So you can do infographics, you can do historical posts, you can do Facebook Live and take your customers behind the scenes on part of your process if you want to do it. But you have to make the staffing plan, and you have to make sure that the person who's doing that function is absolutely backed up by your entire agency, because they need to get that information out and they need to do it quickly.
I like that analogy.
Alan.
Social media is free like a puppy is free. That's great.
All right, thanks for that. Moving along, I think you guys might have touched on this a little bit, but how did you deal with liability issues using a third party? Have you had many issues with claims?
Is that for Connecticut Water or DC?
I believe that's for Connecticut Water, yeah. Doesn't specify.
Really, to my knowledge, we really haven't had any significant liability claims on the customer's property. If anything, it would be in relation to a sinking. If a repair was made in the street and that trench may have collapsed a little bit, and you could have a customer running over that patch and maybe cause some damage to their car. We've had some limited instances in that respect, and that's really how I would answer the third-party liability question.
Yeah, and it's covered under our terms and conditions as well.
Okay. Can you share what the annual investment is to administer the Linebacker program?
I honestly can't. I can tell you how we. I don't have an actual number, but I can kind of tell you more of the people who are dedicated to it. So Danelle, the vast majority of her time is dedicated to Linebacker. I provide, I would say, out of a 40-hour week, maybe 4 or 5 hours a week as needed. Some days, some weeks, it may be less than that. But then you would have our call center staff who answers Linebacker calls. So it's hard for me to quantify, okay, how many people are spending time on Linebacker because of really the aforementioned allocation method that we use to allocate costs to the unregulated subsidiary. So you really have kind of one full-time person who gets some support from myself. And then there are individuals in the field services sector who will go out and troubleshoot and look at repairs as customers, or required repairs as customers call in. Now those individuals actually will charge directly to the job, so those folks will charge to it. So we have this kind of network that has kind of been built into Connecticut Water Company and how we offer the program. So we haven't looked at an overall, hours per se. I'm looking at it from the high level. These are our expenses and this is our revenue.
Okay. Does Maine or Connecticut have issues with frozen water lines?
Haha.
Well, customers have frozen water pipes, most certainly, especially up in our Maine area, but frozen pipes are not covered under the program.
They're not, and what we will do, they're not covered under the program, but there are times where we have some shallow services where we'll make a good faith effort. We'll make the repair for them, but the customer, has to be aware that they have a problem there in that area in their service line, and if there are means they can take to protect that area, or if we can lower it, we will. So those are areas we may take on a case-by-case basis, but then there's freezing inside the home, which is a little bit different, and that's really where the customer has to be aware of the temperature in their home. That's really something that's more in their control, and they need to either use heat tape or draining of seasonal lines. Those are all important things that the customer has to pay attention to, and those where we toe the line on those.
Okay, still a couple more questions for Linebacker, and then we'll be getting into some DC water questions. Does Linebacker cover repairs resulting from a widespread act of God event, such as a hurricane or a blizzard?
No.
Okay. Actually, it looks like we're getting into a Blue Drop question now. So for Blue Drop, what would a presentation from you look like for a utility or group of utilities, for example, in southeastern Michigan? It's like kind of a specific question from somebody, but maybe you can discuss how you might present to a group of utilities about the program?
Absolutely. It just depends on the topic. So, for example, if a group of utilities is interested in stakeholder engagement or how you connect with your customers, we have presentations that we've done on that, and we can adapt it after some research into the group that we'd be presenting to and the audience. Probably the sort of thing I'd want to check in with you on offline and chat, but I'll just mention on a personal note, my wife is from Michigan, and I spend quite a bit of time in Michigan every year, so getting Blue Drop staff over there for a presentation would not present any kind of logistical hurdle for us at all.
All right. Is Blue Drop revenue positive, negative, or neutral at this point?
Well, being as we're an institution that is all of 6 months old, I think we're still in startup mode, and we're still in the period of time where we're funded by DC Water to get our activities off the ground. So we're not revenue positive yet, but we're looking forward to that day. And one of the reasons we're starting small with a borrowed staff and borrowed office space and, scavenged used office furniture even, is that we wanted to set those expectations appropriately and make sure that we could get to being revenue neutral at the very least as quickly as we can.
Okay. Jumping back to Connecticut Water. Connecticut Water looks like about 1% of subscribers have a problem in any given year. Is that about accurate?
It's actually higher with the expanded plans. The expanded plans, I don't have the number right here in front of me, but I know that we have multiple calls with the wastewater and in-home plumbing stuff. So I would say that's more upwards of maybe 3. Okay.
Jumping back to Blue Drop, what is the revenue sharing arrangement between Blue Drop and DC Water? Does all the profit funnel back to DC Water, and what is the expected size of those contributions in the next 2 to 3 years?
That is a great question. It's a question at this exact moment I do not have an answer to because we're still doing our revenue modeling. But broadly, Blue Drop is a nonprofit organization, so you don't have a dividend in the way you would if it was a corporation and there was an owner. But the expectation is that after there's enough money left in the business to make it self-sustaining and help it grow, whatever's left over by way of revenue will flow back to DC Water. The exact percentage of that, the timing of those contributions, all that has yet to be worked out in the future. But I would point out also that on the Bloom side, that's the biosolids material that we're selling on DC Water's behalf, All of that cost savings from not having to pay to haul the material away for land applications stays in DC water. And we're anticipating that's going to be a significant amount of money, measuring in the hundreds of thousands of dollars as of year one.
Okay. Sorry, I just lost
While you're looking, Liam, let me just tell everybody we are officially beyond the time of the webinar. We will answer as many of the questions as we can in sort of the next 10 minutes or so. We don't want to keep you too much longer. We know we only promised 60 minutes, but certainly these questions are terrific ones, and we'd like to try to answer as many as we can. So go ahead, Liam.
Okay. Jumping back to Connecticut Water, have you analyzed the reduction of non-revenue water?
This is really more a Connecticut Water question more than a Linebacker question, it sounds like.
Okay. We can move on.
And I would say that we have, and I would be remiss in giving that information without being prepared to provide it. But I know that we have had a reduction, and I would say that that's through other activities other than just Linebacker. We've actually launched an initiative over the past, let's say, year and a half, and that was
The Blue Drop.
Yeah, what was the name of it? Blue Drop. It was a conservation challenge. It's the water drop challenge that we offered through to customers. So it's kind of a separate question from Linebacker, I think.
Okay, this may also be more of just a general Connecticut Water question, but does Connecticut Water have AMI meters installed?
No, we do not have that. That's something we've looked at, and we're looking at doing a pilot in the near future.
Okay, question for DC Water. How many utilities are you advising today, and can you provide the average length of water networks you manage? Are they small cities or big ones?
Sure. So we have the group of 8 utilities and municipalities up in New Jersey, and that is of various sizes. But Newark is one of the cities, so definitely big cities on that side. York Region, Ontario, Canada is another, and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania has, I think, about a tenth of the size of our system. So they're looking at something on the order of maybe 10 to 15,000 connections, if I remember correctly, but I'd have to look that up to be sure. So our anticipation with this work is that the absolute smallest utilities of the world probably don't have the bandwidth to take us on as a service, and then the largest have their own capacities in these different areas that we've built up, perhaps, but maybe the medium size is a good layer for us. So that's where we're focused at the moment, but after our strategic planning and business development efforts really ramp up in earnest this fall, we'll know more.
All right, and
Liam, how many more questions do we have?
Looks like we only have about 3 more right now.
Okay, and then I think we need to stop after those 3.
Just a follow-up question to that last one. They're also wondering the size of the network that Connecticut Water manages as well.
I guess I would need some clarification, the size of what network?
Maybe how many connections you have.
How many service connections do we have?
Yeah, 90,000 here in Connecticut.
And 30,000 in the state of Maine.
Okay. Jumping back to Blue Drop, how is your pricing model for your consultation? Can you share that?
Sure. So it really is the cost of the employee's time plus a small margin so that we can reinvest it into the business and give some return to DC Water. We've found that we're more than competitive with private sector consulting companies because our salaries as public employees tend to be a little bit lower anyway. And we've had some initial success with our client work in competing on price, but it's too early to tell. Broadly, we don't want to be scooping up money from utilities all across the country to sort of limit the burden on our own ratepayers. It has to be something that presents value to both sides. And we believe that the value we present is twofold. One, we come in extremely well on price usually, and 2, we are folks who are doing the work every day in the public water sector, as opposed to, say, just a straight-up communications consulting company that serves many different industries at the same time.
Okay, and the last question, how does Connecticut Water track the Linebacker program? Do you have a particular software that you use?
We just use our ERP system. So it's just built into our regular customer service system.
Okay,
right.
Well, that's a very healthy set of questions. Thank you very much, all of you, for your great questions, and thank you especially to our speakers, Donnell, Matt, and Alan, for presenting their program offerings that we consider exemplary utility examples. So look towards June for our future webinars on WaterSense and SWAT and NetBlue. And we thank you again for participating in our webinar with us today. If you have any continuing questions, please feel free to give us a call and let us know. And watch for the PowerPoint presentation and recording, which will be posted very shortly. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.